Republican candidate for Union County Sheriff. And to touch on something he did say, I voted for Trump in 2016, 2020, and will be voting for Mr. Trump in 2024. Just to go ahead and get that out there in front. Before I get too far into this, I want to take a moment for us to remember our servicemen who recently lost their lives in a training mission in our expeditionary force over there assisting Israel. I think it was maybe 5 servicemen. Let's keep them in mind. They volunteered to go over there. They were there while we were here sleeping in our beds. And unfortunately, they lost their life in a helicopter training accident. So we should remember these people. Second, I'd also like to take a moment to remember all the hostages that are being held over there, and especially the American hostages. Who knows what they're going through? I just can't even imagine, especially if I was their family member. So let's pray that the expeditionary forces over there can free them soon and put an end to this whole thing. One thing I want to mention before I get going is a number I want to bring up, and I would like you to remember it, and we'll touch bases on it, and that's 70,000. 70,000, okay? He mentioned something about, during his talk, that people wanted to defund law enforcement. In some cases, that's not a bad idea. I kind of thought about this. I'm like, all right, if we defund law enforcement, let's say that if an individual here doesn't want to pay for law enforcement, we'll deduct that from your taxes. And then if you ever have an emergency and you call 911, someone's breaking into my house with a gun, we'll say, yes, ma'am, we'll get someone right out there from Union County Sheriff's Office. All we need is a credit card. Because you have not paying for your taxes, so we'll let us run this. Oh, wait a minute, it's not going through. Do you have another card? And maybe that's just how ridiculous the whole thing is. Okay, I've never heard. Why don't we defund the military, not have a military, and let's give it 2 days and see what happens. Okay. He is right. We are under attack. We're under attack for the first time in my lifetime. I'm 61, by our government and by foreign entities. Our borders are being crossed. Illegal aliens are coming across. I don't know if you've seen all these protests on TV, but that should give you an idea maybe how many terrorists we have in the country now. So I don't know about you, but that scares the heck out of me. And that's one reason why I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment. As sheriff, I believe if you can legally carry a gun, do so. Carry a weapon. Defend yourself, defend your property, defend your home. Back to the 70,000, and I'll be brief because other people want to talk. That is an average amount of people that die every year in the United States from fentanyl overdoses. And fentanyl is a problem, I feel, that is becoming out of control in this county. A lot of people don't realize it. I retired from the Polk County Sheriff's Office, which is in Central Florida. That's where I got my training. I like to mention that. I'm not embarrassed of it. It's like when you go to a lawyer and you ask them, well, before I hire you for this multi-million-dollar case, where'd you go to school? Did you get it online or did you go to Harvard? And they go, well, I went to Harvard. Well, I look at the Polk County Sheriff's Office as the Harvard of law enforcement. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with our law enforcement, but as the Harvard law enforcement, there's only 6 accreditations you can have, and they've had all 6. They lead the nation in accreditations. So that is where I got my training. That's where I grew up in law enforcement. That's where I learned to do what I do or did. I've given everyone a card. On the back is a QR code. You can scan it. It will take you right to my webpage. It gives you all the details of my plans, what I plan on doing, and all my background. I did work undercover narcotics. I was in law enforcement for 20 years. I was on the SWAT team. I did entries. We did an average of 15 search warrants a week. We're dealing with drugs, hostage situations, barricaded people, husbands having arguments with their wives and closing the door and don't want to let anyone in. I've been shot at least 3 times. I'm sure there's military people have been shot at more than that. But back to the 70,000 fentanyl deaths. I have been saddened walking around this county campaigning of how many people I come across that have lost someone from this poison. And it's just astonishing. It's like every other person. I've run into 4 people in town alone that have lost their son, their daughters, nephews or whatever. The people that put together my webpage just lost their nephew, 21 years old, from fentanyl. And I don't feel like we're doing anything about it. I mentioned to you, I worked undercover narcotics in Florida, and I also work organized crime. And Daytona Beach, there's a biker gang, and they're a large, dangerous biker gang called Outlaw Bikers, and they are dangerous. They have opened up a clubhouse in Murphy, North Carolina. I do not think they have opened up a clubhouse from Daytona up here in Murphy to come see the leaves change. They are a criminal organization. They are spreading their enterprise up here, they have, and they're muling drugs to our county. And we're doing nothing to stop it. I hate to say that. I believe our officers, the deputies, are doing the best they can with the resources they have, but it's not getting it done, okay? We only have a little over 26,000 population in this county. I can't believe that when I can talk to 3 or 4 or 5 kids randomly, and they can almost tell you a drug dealer on their phone, that we can't go find these people. I'm telling you, if elected sheriff, we are going to readdress this issue. I'm going to task people for just this. We're going to find them. We're going to do search warrants on them, and I'm going to burn the world down. We're going to take everything they have legally from them. But if you sell drugs in Union County, you might as well get used to looking over your back, because the Union County Sheriff's Office is going to be right behind you every day. The last thing I want to talk about, because I want to leave time for everyone else, is I am a constitutional sheriff, and I want to clarify what that is. That means that the sheriff's office will be built on these blocks: the United States Constitution, the Georgia Constitution, and Georgia law. That's going to be the building blocks of the Union County Sheriff's Office. I'm not saying it isn't now, but as sheriff, I will make sure that it is that way. We will not be violating anyone's rights, or you'll be looking for another job, okay? The Constitution dictates what we can and cannot do. Recently, you may have saw in the news, the governor of New Mexico signed an emergency order, I don't know what for reason, that suspended the rights of all people that had concealed carry permits, that they could not carry their weapons. Just decided that was an emergency order. The only thing that stopped this governor was the sheriffs in New Mexico. They stood up and said that we are not going to enforce that. The sheriff in Georgia is one of 4 constitutional officers. The sheriff authority is dictated by the Georgia Constitution, and the Georgia Constitution is you. Your elected officials designed that. The sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer in the county. If an unlawful order or law comes down, the sheriff is your last line of defense to stand in front of this and not let it happen. I don't believe this is going to happen, but if Georgia down in Atlanta, they go out of their mind and say, all right, we're going to collect your guns, I can tell you as sheriff, we're not participating in that. Now, they can put me in jail, but my deputies will not participate in that. So they're going to have a problem up here in Union County, because to indict me, they have to go to a grand jury. And guess who has to sit on the grand jury? You. So if I'm doing your bidding, I don't think they're going to indict me. So, but to be honest with you, if anything comes to that, I stand side by side by the citizens of Union County. I will not allow that to occur. I'm going to close and stop speaking, and I'm going to give you my reason why. And I'll take a few questions if it's okay.
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln, when he was running for office the first time, and this is why I don't like to talk long, he gave a kind of a long speech, and he noticed that most of the people in the crowd were clapping, and they seemed to agree with the speech. Some people have heard this before, I'm sorry. But he did notice there was one lady in front who had her arms crossed, and she didn't clap not one time. So after that, the speech, he walked down, he confronted her. He said, ma'am, he said, during my speech, you never even reacted, you never clapped. She said, well, sir, to be honest with you, I don't like you. And she says, can I be even more honest? He goes, yes, please. She goes, sir, matter of fact, I hate you, Mr. Lincoln. And to go further, if you were my husband, I would poison your tea and try to kill you. Well, he was set back. He was like, he goes, well, ma'am, he thought a minute. He says, well, can I be honest with you? She said, certainly. He said, ma'am, if you're my wife, I'd happily drink that tea. So, anyway, that's what I'd like to close on. Is it okay to questions or you want to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate that, Joe. Look, y'all, this is y'all's meeting, I'm just facilitator, so if you got any questions for these guys,
Yes.
please.
I'll keep it brief because there are more people who want to speak, but anyone have a question? I do have all my cards, just so you know. Sorry, gave out, my mouth gets dry. My QR code's on the back. If you scan it, it will take you to my webpage. It will answer a lot of questions. It has a lot of details that is boring for me to stand here and cover, but you might find very interesting. So can I answer anybody else's questions? Please, sir?
Yeah, in the past here.
Can I get your
in the
name, if you don't
county,
mind?
we've
Can I
had-
get you?
In the past, Harold Collins.
Mr. Collins, okay?
In the past here in the county, we have had cops driving cars home from out of town. Under your administration, will you put a stop to that, or will you allow that still?
You come right out with the bad questions, don't you? That's actually called the Indianapolis Plan. That was started back in the late 60s and 70s. And they found, the Indianapolis Police Department did a study that they found that taking cars home was part of crime watch, or crime prevention, okay? I have no intention on making life harder for my officers. Now, at Polk County, you were not allowed to take your car out of the county. But the county was so huge, to get out of the county, it'd take you an hour, okay? It's different here, all right? So to answer your question, I guess the short answer, if they live in Fannin or Towns County, no, I'm not going to stop that, okay? I think it benefits everyone, even the car just leaving the county, you've seen it benefits them. So no, I'm not gonna cause a hardship on the officers. Now, if they live further than that, we may have to talk about that, but I had, to be honest, that hasn't even crossed my mind. So I guess my answer is no right now. Yes, you had a question.
Yes, my name's Cindy Vandry.
Okay.
I want to give you a little scenario. So as far as First Amendment rights,
Uh-huh.
if we're in, say, a county commissioner meeting and we are having a question given to the commissioner,
Mhm.
and for whatever reason, he may not like the question
Yes.
or doesn't want to answer the question, and there's some back and forth discussion that takes place. And at some point, I guess I'm gonna assume that he did not like what was said or being said, and he had one of the sheriffs remove somebody from the meeting.
Mhm.
Now, my question kind of at that point was, what law was broken that that person had to be removed
Right.
from the meeting?
Sure.
And when the person was followed out, the
Mhm.
sheriff that did what Lamar asked,
Mhm.
and this gentleman asked the sheriff, why did you remove that person? What happened that that person needed to be removed?
Mhm.
And he did not have an answer. His
Okay.
answer was, Lamar told me to.
Okay.
So, to me, that's kind of like not our First Amendment right.
Mhm.
What is your, take on something like that? Are you gonna have your deputies doing that sort of thing? Because I'm gonna assume under MAC at this point, it was okay to do that.
Okay. To clarify some things, the sheriff is in charge of the courthouse, in charge of courthouse security. He's in charge of any meetings or anything like that that goes on. He is responsible to provide courthouse security. What you mentioned, I have been to several meetings. I haven't observed it. That doesn't mean it hasn't occurred, but I make it the point, I've been at least 4 or 5 now. To answer your question, the sheriff is responsible for security. It is a county meeting which has rules, time limits, and things like that. If a person stands up, now this is what I will instruct my deputies, and this will be the policy of the Union County Sheriff's Office. If someone stands up and asks a question and Lamar doesn't like it, my deputies are not going to remove you. Okay? The only way we will ever remove you is if you become disruptive to the meeting, to the community, and no further business can be performed because you refuse to follow the rules and sit down. My deputies will come over and say, ma'am, sir, would you please do as I ask, sit down, and if you have no question. If you refuse then technically you're disorderly conduct.
Sure.
That's the crime, okay? You're now disrupting an official meeting, you become disorderly. We would charge you, we wouldn't charge you probably, we just escort you out. And if you refuse to leave, then we charge you with disorderly conduct, and if we went further than that, we charge you with resisting, okay? My deputies do not work for the county commissioner.
Thank you.
I do not work, or the sheriff, whoever the sheriff you elect, does not work for the county commissioner. The county commissioner gives this budget, that's where his authority ends. The person in charge of the sheriff's office is the sheriff. They will do what the sheriff says. I'm telling you, my deputies will not do that, okay? Now, if someone gets disruptive and they will not leave or sit down, we can't just let you sit there and ruin the meeting. We will ask you to leave.
Sure.
That's how we will handle it. But we will not ask you to leave just because it's uncomfortable. Does that answer your question?
You did. Good
Okay.
answer.
Anything else? Because I don't want to take away from these people's time.
Yes.
Any other questions? So, okay,
I have a question.
yes.
Can you help me understand, I noticed like some, like for example, in the paper today, that fellow that got arrested for the school shooting. When he was arrested, that case was immediately kicked up to the GBI. And I guess I'm always curious why some of the more higher level cases, why don't we handle them on a county level? Why are we kicking them up to the GBI?
Actually, Doug might be able to answer that better, but I'll try. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm not super familiar with the case, but I'm going to think maybe they charge him with terroristic threats, and that would go to the GBI. Probably that the sheriff wants it off his books as far as investigation. Okay, so they feel like if it goes somewhere else, and I'm just guessing, on that basis, but maybe if it goes somewhere else and the case falls apart, it isn't on their books, okay? But if he got charged with terroristic threats or anything like that, it probably is going to go to the GBI, just the same as if we had an officer-involved shooting, we're going to involve the GBI because we want an impartial source investigating it. That's about as best I can do, not knowing all the details of that particular thing. And one more question maybe, so everybody else has, anybody? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.